Hello, and welcome to the final episode in 2020 of the Retirement Cafe podcast. I hope you've had a wonderful Christmas and that you were able to enjoy spending time with the people who are most important to you. If you tuned in to last week's podcast, episode 111, called Reasons to be Grateful in a Challenging Year, you'll have heard me talk about the benefits of gratitude and how mankind is making huge strides forward in so many areas, despite the daily negative news stories we're bombarded with. I mentioned one of the books that I'm currently reading called 10 Global Trends Every Smart Person Should Know by Ronald Bailey and Marion Tuppy, and how it's been described as a gorgeous, self-contained vignette on human progress. So as we head towards the end of 2020 and the dawning of a new year in just a few days' time, with a COVID-19 vaccine rolling out as I speak, and along with it, the possibility of regaining some elements of what we may call normality in our lives, I thought it would be a good time to reflect on the positive discourse that run through a number of my podcasts during the past 12 months. For those of you who know me well, you know that I'm definitely a glass half full person, so a whole episode on positivity is perfect for me. Across the 52 episodes, I've interviewed 50 different guests about pensions and tax, about probate and planning for death, about emotional intelligence and decision-making, about managing grief and financial scams, and about personal stories of retirement or life in general. While the guests are all unique and the topics incredibly varied, there are some obvious themes that arise around positivity. The first of those, and the one that inspires me the most, is about people taking positive action for a better future. This action is often driven from personal experience and the need to address an issue or a difficulty in their own lives. But that's just the starting point. The individual's vision then develops into a movement or an initiative that benefits many people. What starts off as a desire to improve their own personal circumstances or well-being develops into something for the wider community. There's no doubt that coronavirus has had a significant impact upon individuals, businesses, and our society this year. But through the hard times, there are leading lights offering help and support in so many different ways. Way before the pandemic, the Silver Line was doing amazing work to reduce isolation and loneliness in later life. It seems a lifetime ago that I interviewed the Silver Line's founder, Dame Esther Rantzen, for the podcast. She was my very special guest in episode 68 back in February. Now, Esther is best known as a TV presenter of That's Life, among other shows, and founder in the 1980s of Childline, a free, private, and confidential service where children can talk about any issues that they're dealing with. More recently, Esther's attentions turned to the needs of the older generation, and in 2013, she launched the Silver Line. The Silver Line is the only confidential, free helpline for older people that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. Since launch, they've received over 2.5 million calls. And the shocking statistic is that 53% of callers say they have literally no one else to turn to speak to. I'll let Dame Esther Rantzen take up the story of how the Silver Line came about.
When I moved in here, it was the first time that in 71 years I was living on my own. And I didn't enjoy it.
Right.
And I remember saying to my daughter, who's quite religious, I'm agnostic, she's quite religious. So I was a bit shocked to hear myself say to her, you know, Em, I think God wants you to move in with me. And fortunately she laughed, and I did what I always do when I need therapy. I rang the Daily Mail, and they said, good topic, write about it. And I got such a huge response that I was invited to a conference by a group of charities called the Campaign to End Loneliness, and that was when I got my light bulb moment and thought, well, if a helpline helped children who had problems that they didn't know how to solve, maybe this loneliness thing is something that a helpline would help with.
Yeah.
So I asked all the experts who were at the conference, and they all said, do it. So we did it.
Since the coronavirus pandemic, the Silver Line's work has become even more important for so many older people. Esther is in her 80s herself now and is acutely aware of the critical role the Silver Line is playing in many, many isolated older people's lives. If you'd like to find out more about the Silver Line or make a donation, head to the show notes where you'll find some useful links. The charity relies solely on voluntary donations, and sadly, Christmas is their busiest time, so please support them if you can. You've probably read about a whole host of charities and projects that have sprung up to address the challenges we've faced since the pandemic hit our shores. More recently, in episode 106, I spoke with Tracy Blick from the Christchurch Food Bank, who explained how they handed out 6,000 food parcels. That's 6,000 during a 12-week period over the summer, the same number they would normally distribute in 12 months. So all the food banks out there are doing tremendous work with an amazing group of volunteers to help people who find themselves in need of just basic provisions. But we also know there's been a lot of discussion in the press about the impact of COVID on our mental health. I had a quick search online to understand more and was saddened to read the results of studies undertaken over recent months by the Mental Health Foundation. 82% of British adults have experienced stress because of the pandemic. It's quite a shocking figure. But on a positive note, 60% who had experienced stress said walking helped them cope, and 50% visiting green spaces was helpful for them. Now, you may remember Heather Waring and our conversation in episode 82. Heather discovered the mental health benefits of walking herself after a difficult time in her life, long before COVID came along, and wants others to experience the same benefits. She's now on a mission to get 1 million women walking by connecting over a shared love of her favourite pastime and talking about what walking brings to their lives. Heather explains more in this snippet from our conversation.
When we think of walking, we often think more of the physical side of it, the activity side of it, the one step in front of another, how many miles can you cover? But for me, and this is borne out by my recovery from adrenal fatigue and burnout, is the mental capacity of walking, what it gives you in freeing up headspace, what it gives you in slowing the pace, in making you more mindful. So there's a lot of, and it gives me a place to also share my expertise and to answer questions, to give people information. And at this time of coronavirus, where there are people who are, and countries, much more limited in the walking that they can do than we are here. And we're very lucky that we can go out at least once a day and walk. Or it's been a lifeline. And there's a lady in India who a couple of weeks ago said, please, ladies, can you continue to share your walks where you're walking? Because it uplifts me, it gets me through my day, it gives me something to look forward to. There's other people in France and Spain who can't walk as far as we're able to, saying it just keeps me looking forward and gives me hope to what I can do once this is over.
Now, I know personally how much better I feel after doing some exercise, and like Heather, my guest in episode 90 is no different. I really was truly inspired by Nicole Morelli's story. Nicole is the founder of a sea swimming group, the Menopausal Mermaids, who are based in County Antrim in Northern Ireland. Although Nicole started sea swimming to help her recuperate from a hip replacement, she soon realised the enormous mental health benefits of taking the plunge all year round. One thing led to another, and her regular sea swim with friends soon turned into the group that is now known as the Menopausal Mermaids, almost by accident. They've become quite well known on social media and have appeared on the local BBC News. Nicole's sheer enthusiasm was evident when we chatted. She's created a community of swimmers from all walks of life, each with their own story and challenges, but with a united love of cold water and its healing benefits. Here's Nicole explaining how she feels after a dip in the Atlantic Ocean during our conversation in April this year at the height of the first lockdown.
Yeah, and I can't explain what happens, but yeah, it's just, I mean, coming out of the water and your skin is pink and the wind chill is burning your face off, but you feel invincible. You just I feel so strong, I feel 10 feet tall, you know, and you're ready for the day. It just sets you up completely. But I guess the endorphins are going and it's just a buzz. And then, of course, there's a social side to it. We have a lovely social side to it, which I'm really missing a lot now at the moment.
So people have used all sorts of methods to help stay mentally and physically healthy in 2020, not only for themselves, but for the wider community. And it was great to hear from some of them on the podcast this year. One of the other themes that ran through 2020 podcasts around positivity was about aging. The aging discourse has had a negative tilt for decades. We often hear about a demographic time bomb caused by a combination of increased life expectancy and declining birth rates. The accepted story goes that there are more old people who are not productive, who get ill, and so they become a burden on society. And this is going to be a major problem going forward. But there is another perspective. Many of this year's guests have shared a more positive attitude towards aging. I was honoured to interview one of the UK's leading longevity experts, Professor Andrew J. Scott, to celebrate our 100th episode in early November. Professor Scott's credentials are remarkable, but he is probably best known as the co-author of two groundbreaking books that have taken the world by storm. The 100-Year Life, published in 2016, and The New Long Life, released this year. I found our conversation fascinating. Professor Scott's philosophy is that all the negative spin is based on the key statistic, on average, that we're living longer, but we're also healthier for longer, which sounded like brilliant news to him. We're actually aging better than ever before. We discussed many different topics, including one that I found really interesting, about the level of control we now have over our own futures. It's clear that what I now do in my 50s, and it's fair to say that I'd only just fall into that bracket, will influence what I can do in my 60s, which will influence what I can do in my 70s. A skill that has become more important is being able to relate to your future self, because you've got many more future selves. Professor Scott explains more in this excerpt from our conversation.
Life expectancy has increased. Not all the years are good ones. On average, the years of life that are spent in good health has remained constant. So you've got more years of good health, but you've got more years of bad health. And you want to, of course, minimize that period of ill health at the end. And not all of that is under your control, but some of it is. And you know, that to me is, you know, we haven't got rid of the end of life, but we have kind of inserted this period at the end of late middle age. That's really what's happened. And you know, most people assume that this living longer is about more years right at the end where we're ill, but actually it's not. I say it's really this period sort of 50 to 70 that's kind of been reinvented. And that can be a great opportunity, but it does require work. And the good news is, no matter what age you are, 50, 60, 70 or 80 or even 90, if you do something now, you do affect the future. Of course, the earlier you start, the better. But that's an incredibly important skill. So working on trying to be kind to your future self is, a new life skill.
And who better to explain what it's like to get older than someone who's already reached their 90s? Our wonderful next door neighbour, Peggy Bastion, joined me for episode 72 to share the story of her life in her 90s. She inspires me every day with her positive outlook on life, the way she keeps moving and keeps connecting with people of all ages. This summer, she introduced us to another elderly neighbour, Elsie, who celebrated her 100th birthday during lockdown. Peggy pops in to check Elsie is okay every day, even as though she's even half her age. Just keep moving is Peggy's secret to living better for longer, and that's a pretty good place to start.
I hope, the troubles at the moment get solved and over, just to carry on the same, and just to go out in the garden one day and sit down, and that's it.
Fantastic.
And just go to sleep. Yeah. No, I'm quite happy with everything, but the main thing is good health. As long as I can keep walking, just walking is wonderful, and meeting, having a chat here and there. I think I've done all that I want to. Yeah.
Other personal stories we've heard this year about taking a positive outlook and finding purpose in retirement are from Mark Ness, episode 74, Katrina Moss, episode 97, Lindsay Froud, episode 94, and Mark Shaken, episode 103. I'd like to thank all the guests of the podcast this year. Thank you so much for taking the time and the effort to appear on the show. It really, really does help. In all these examples I've shared today, I see mankind's overarching, caring and compassionate approach to fellow mankind. I see a desire to generally do good, to innovate and to improve our lot, not just for ourselves and our families, but for the wider society at large. There is still much to be done, but I'll continue to wear my glass half full t-shirt and live the ethos too. I wonder whether taking guest Rory Sutherland's approach to problem solving could help solve some of the biggest challenges facing us as we head into 2021. In episode 73, Rory, advertising legend and UK vice chairman of Ogilvy, explained how the best ideas don't make rational sense. They make you feel more than they make you think. In fact, this is the case for all decisions we make in life. Even when we think we're making decisions rationally, we're mostly being driven by our emotions. Rory believes that the big problems we face every day could very well be solved by letting go of logic and embracing the irrational. In this snippet from our conversation, Rory puts forward a rather left field idea about how we can address the challenge of funding social care in later life.
One very interesting way to get people to pay for insurance against needing care in later life is simply to add an extra year onto the end of your mortgage. Right. So you continue paying your mortgage for 1 year extra, and then that buys you, let's say, £700,000 worth of insurance in the event that you need care at home.
Right.
There are the other interesting way to frame, of course, the care question is, what if the government simply said, if you commit 10% of the value of your home as effective inheritance tax, we will insure your care costs. Now what you're saying to the inheritors is you can either have a definite 90% or you can have a chance of 100% and take the risk of naught. Okay?
Yeah.
So a voluntary inheritance tax, which would pay for certain things in later life, would be a really interesting thing to explore.
Maybe that's something to hold on to as we head into 2021. Next time you're faced with a difficulty, try to think laterally or to feel your way through with positivity, as I'm pretty sure you'll be heading in the right direction. If you'd like to listen to any of the episodes I've mentioned today, head to the show notes on our website where you'll find lots of useful links. As ever, if you've enjoyed this episode, please do leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Please share with your friends so they can also listen. And be sure to subscribe either on our website or your preferred podcast player so you never miss an episode. I hope you get to celebrate the positives of 2020 and the dawning of a new year with your loved ones. And I wish you and yours a truly fulfilling 2021. So until next time, this is Justin King helping you feel more informed in your retirement.